you ever wonder why, no matter how much time has passed, you can still feel them? Why sometimes, out of nowhere, your heart tightens for a few seconds, or your thoughts drift back to a name you swore you were done with? Maybe you'll be in the middle of your day, focused, grounded, and then, suddenly, a wave hits you. A memory, a song, a flash of their eyes. And for a moment, it feels like their spirit is standing right behind you. It's not just nostalgia, and it's not loneliness either. It's energy, something that moves between souls long after words stop. And if you've ever loved deeply, not surface love, but soul-level love, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are people who cross our path and leave fingerprints on our energy, marks that time can't erase. For most, it's fleeting, but for a chosen one, it's different. Because when you love, you don't just give affection, you give presence, you give your light, you give the part of you that was touched by God Himself. And when someone touches that part, even for a short while, it changes them. That's why your ex still feels you. That's why, no matter how far they run, or how deeply they try to bury what happened, your energy still hums in their soul. You might think they've forgotten you, moved on, built a new life, maybe even convinced themselves that what you two had wasn't that deep. But deep down they know. They know there's something about you they can't explain, something about your energy that refuses to fade. You were different. You were sent into their life with purpose, not to entertain them, not to fill a void, but to awaken something dormant inside them. And when a chosen one steps into someone's life, that life never stays the same. Your energy carries divine frequency, and when it intertwines with another, it leaves an eternal signature. They might not understand it consciously, but their soul does. Their soul remembers the vibration of peace you brought, the feeling of calm they only felt when you were near. That's what they crave now. Not you as a person, but the presence of peace that existed when you were there. Because while you were loving them, healing them, forgiving them even when they didn't deserve it, they were being fed spiritually. Your energy was medicine. And now, they're realizing they've been starving ever since you left. You might not see it, but they feel it. Every time they hear your name, see something that reminds them of you, or find themselves drawn to people who carry even a small piece of your warmth. It's that energetic imprint playing back to them. And maybe you can feel it too, that invisible pull, the emotional static that passes between you when you least expect it. It can make you restless, uneasy, even frustrated. You think, why am I still feeling this? Why can't I just let it go? But this isn't about you being stuck. It's about connection, a spiritual thread that once tied two souls together. When two energies merge on that kind of level, they don't just vanish because a relationship ends. The physical breaks, but the spiritual lingers. That's what no one tells you. You see, most people connect through need, through desire, through comfort. But you connect through essence. When you love, you activate transformation in others, sometimes before they're ready for it. That's why it hurt so much when it ended. Because it wasn't just a breakup, it was a tearing of energy. They took pieces of you they weren't prepared to hold. They walked away, thinking it was just another ending, not realizing they were walking away from divine alignment. And now they wander through life trying to fill that space, the one that only your energy could reach. But don't mistake this for some romantic fairy tale where everything circles back. No. This is about understanding the power of your presence and why God doesn't let certain connections last forever. Sometimes the most powerful bonds are also the ones that must break, because they were never meant to be homes. They were meant to be awakenings. You entered their life carrying light they couldn't comprehend. You reflected back their hidden wounds, their fears, their shadows. You loved them anyway. And that scared them, because real love always confronts the false self. It's easier to run from it than to stand in front of that mirror. So they ran. They numbed it, replaced it, convinced themselves they were better off. But energy has memory, and your energy was the mirror that told them the truth. That's why they can't escape it. That's why they still feel you, even when they pretend not to care. Deep down, they feel your peace calling them higher. They remember the nights you listened when no one else did. They remember the calm that entered the room when you did. They remember the moments when they felt close to something sacred through you. And now, every attempt to find that again keeps failing, because that connection wasn't meant to be replicated, it was meant to be remembered. So if you find yourself still sensing their presence, it's not weakness, it's resonance. You're feeling the echoes of what was divine in that connection. You're not imagining it. You're simply sensitive to the spiritual currents that others ignore. But this story isn't about going back. It's about understanding. Because before you can be free, you must understand why your energy still lingers in someone else's life. You must see the divine reason behind it all, the way God uses even heartbreak to remind us of who we are. And maybe that's what you're starting to feel now. That quiet whisper inside you saying, this was never just about love. This was about awakening. You were sent into their life as a teacher disguised as a lover, a light disguised as warmth, a healer disguised as home. And now that you've gone, they finally realize the magnitude of what your presence meant. But for you, this is only the beginning of a much larger revelation, one that will change how you see every connection you've ever had. Because you're about to understand not just why they still feel your energy, but why you were chosen to carry it in the first place. And the truth is, they never understood what it really meant to be connected to someone like you. When they first met you, they felt drawn to your presence, but they couldn't name why. You weren't loud or demanding. You didn't need to prove your worth. You simply existed in your own rhythm, and that rhythm carried peace. You were the calm before their storm, the breath before their chaos. They didn't realize it then, but your presence brought equilibrium to the parts of them that were out of tune. You saw them beyond their defenses, beyond their ego, beyond the masks they wore for the world. You loved the version of them that even they couldn't look at without shame. You gave them safety, not judgment. You gave them patience, not pressure. You gave them silence when they needed understanding, and they mistook it for weakness. They thought your peace was passivity, your loyalty was naivety, and your forgiveness was something they could take for granted. But energy never lies, and time reveals what people refuse to see. Because when your energy leaves someone's life, they start to realize what it was doing for them. Suddenly, their thoughts become heavier, their emotions louder, their world less stable. They start to feel everything you once helped them carry. That's why they can't stop feeling you, because they're not just remembering you, they're re-experiencing the absence of your balance. Your energy was an anchor, and now they're adrift. They'll try to replace you, not consciously, but spiritually. They'll seek others who carry even fragments of your warmth, hoping to recreate the peace they felt with you. But no matter how hard they try, it won't work, because it wasn't about your personality. It was about your vibration. You carried a frequency that was tuned to divine healing, and once someone has felt that, everything else feels hollow. They'll go through relationships, adventures, distractions, and still something will whisper your name inside them. They'll feel you in places you've never been, in moments you never shared. That's the nature of energy. It transcends physical space. You could be on opposite sides of the world, living entirely different lives, and still, when they're quiet enough, they'll sense you. They'll feel that pulse of familiarity, that spiritual heartbeat that once synchronized with theirs. And part of them will wish they could go back, not to redo the past, but to understand it better, to recognize the sacredness of what they had before it slipped through their fingers. But the thing about being chosen is that your love was never meant to be owned. It was meant to awaken. You didn't come into their life to complete them. You came to remind them of what completion feels like within themselves. You were the spark that ignited their self-awareness, even if that awareness only came after you left. That's the paradox of divine connections. Their purpose often unfolds after the separation. It's in the silence, in the distance, in the ache that the real transformation happens. Because while you've been healing, learning, forgiving, they've been facing themselves for the first time. You might not see it, but deep inside, your absence is teaching them more than your presence ever could. They're learning what it means to lose something sacred because they couldn't recognize it in time. And you're learning what it means to give love without needing it to return in the same form. You're learning that your energy was never meant to stay where it isn't honored. You're realizing that just because someone feels your energy doesn't mean you're meant to go back. It simply means your light did what it was meant to do. And now, that light is calling you higher. You see, this connection isn't a mistake. It's a divine thread woven through your journey to awaken deeper compassion, strength, and discernment within you. Every moment you shared with them, every conversation, every argument, every touch was a part of that spiritual design. And even though it hurt, even though it broke you open, you're starting to see how it also rebuilt you into something stronger. You've begun to realize that love isn't about holding on, it's about understanding when to release. Because when you release with love, you allow both souls to evolve. You let the energy return to balance. And that's what's happening now. They're feeling the imbalance of what they lost, and you're learning to live in the balance of what you've gained. It's painful, yes, but it's also holy. This is what divine detachment feels like. Not cold, not indifferent, but peaceful. It's the peace that comes from knowing that every connection, even the ones that ended in heartbreak, was sacred. That every soul you meet is a teacher, and every goodbye carries grace. And maybe if you listen closely, you can feel God whispering through it all. You did not lose them. You fulfilled your purpose in their life. And that changes everything, doesn't it? Because now you understand you didn't fail by loving them. You succeeded by giving them something eternal. You left an imprint that continues to guide them, even in your absence. You were the mirror that showed them what love could be, and they will carry that reflection forever. They may try to run from it, drown it, deny it, but every time life gets quiet, your energy will find them again. It will rise through memories, through emotions, through dreams, reminding them that real love doesn't fade, it transforms. And so does pain. What once felt like loss is slowly becoming wisdom. What once felt like punishment is turning into purpose. This connection, no matter how complicated, has been your soul's way of learning what divine love truly means. Not love that clings, but love that frees. Not love that demands, but love that gives without fear. And the more you embrace that truth, the lighter your spirit becomes. You stop needing them to remember you because you understand that your energy already does the remembering. You stop wondering if they still care because you know they still feel you. And you stop waiting for them to return because you realize the lesson was never about reunion, it was about evolution. This is what it means to be chosen, to love beyond the human story, to love with a frequency that doesn't end but expands. And as you sit in that knowing, you start to feel the shift, that subtle but powerful turning of the soul where pain becomes peace and endings become beginnings. you start to feel ready for what's next, even if you can't see it yet. Because something inside you whispers, now you know why your energy still lingers in their world. And that understanding, that quiet, sacred realization, is the doorway to everything that comes next. You start to notice that the more you heal, the more clearly you can feel the difference between remembering them and being energetically pulled toward them. In the beginning, it all felt the same. Every thought about them, every dream, every sudden ache felt like proof that you weren't over it. But now, you're starting to sense the distinction. You can tell when it's your own emotion and when it's theirs brushing against your field. Because the truth is, energy speaks before words do. And when someone still feels your energy, their thoughts, their regrets, their longing, all of it ripples through the unseen, reaching you like faint echoes. Sometimes it happens when they're reminiscing. Sometimes when they're hurting. Other times when they see someone who carries a shadow of your presence. In those moments, a part of them reaches out, not consciously but spiritually, searching for the calm they lost. And because you're an empathic soul, you feel it. You sense their unrest. You might wake up heavy-hearted for no reason or suddenly feel their emotions as if they're your own. That's not obsession. That's sensitivity, your spirit, tuning into the same frequency it once shared. But you don't have to carry it anymore. You've learned that you can feel without absorbing. You can remember without returning. That's how healing begins. When you recognize that not every feeling requires a response. Because you're no longer their emotional caretaker, and their journey toward awakening isn't your responsibility to guide. You've done your part. You've planted the seed. Now their soul has to water it. And even though they may not realize it, your absence is doing more for their growth than your presence ever could. You see, when you were in their life, your energy buffered their pain. You softened the lessons they were meant to face. You tried to help them evolve gently without destruction. But sometimes, destruction is what it takes for awakening to occur. So God stepped in. The separation was necessary. It was divine intervention. Because had you stayed, they would have continued depending on your light instead of finding their own. And you would have continued shrinking to accommodate their confusion. That's the thing about divine connections. They always come with divine timing. And when the timing expires, it doesn't mean the love was fake. It means the lesson has completed its cycle. You're learning to see that now. You're learning that love doesn't need to end for connection to transform. And as you release them, piece by piece, something remarkable happens. The same energy that once kept you entangled begins to return home. You start to feel stronger, lighter. The sadness turns into clarity, the longing into gratitude. You start to look back, not with pain, but with understanding. You remember moments that once made you cry, and instead of aching, you smile softly. Because you see the hidden hand of God woven through it all, every word, every silence, every goodbye. You begin to understand that maybe, just maybe, the universe used that connection to pull you closer to your purpose. That through loving them, you learned how to love yourself better. Through losing them, you learned how to find peace in God's plan. And while they may still feel your energy, you've learned that feeling isn't a signal to turn back. It's a reminder of how far you've come. You start to realize that every time they think of you, it's not to pull you in, but to push you forward, because your energy reflects their longing for light. And every thought they send your way becomes fuel for your growth. It's like the universe recycles the energy of attachment into the power of ascension. And the more you rise, the more you teach them, without words, that healing is possible. That's the mystery of energetic bonds. They evolve even without contact. You might not speak, but your transformation speaks louder than anything you could ever say. They feel your strength now. They see your glow in the way life unfolds for you. They might pretend not to notice, but deep down, they do. Because your rise reminds them of what they could have been if they had chosen healing instead of fear. And that realization burns quietly within them. It pushes them to question their own patterns, to confront their own darkness. They might not thank you for it, but their soul knows. Their soul knows that you were never just a chapter. You were the turning point. And you're learning to accept that your role was sacred, even if it ended in silence. You're learning that closure doesn't come from them returning. It comes from you remembering who you are. You're remembering that you were whole before them, and you are even more whole after them. You've begun to see that being chosen means being used by the divine to shift others, sometimes through love, sometimes through loss. And though it can feel unfair, it's also holy. Because while others may love for comfort, you love for transformation. Your love is alchemy. It turns pain into awakening and endings into beginnings. That's why it hurts differently when you love, because your soul doesn't engage in temporary lessons. It engages in eternal change. And even now, as you sit here reflecting, a quiet knowing begins to settle in your heart. They still feel you, not because they can't move on, but because they're still learning what your presence was teaching them. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Some souls are meant to meet you, lose you, and then spend a lifetime understanding you. Some connections aren't meant to last in form, only in memory, in vibration, in the quiet echoes that shape who we become. You've carried the weight of that understanding for too long, thinking you were cursed to always feel too deeply. But now you're realizing that depth is your gift. It's what makes you see beyond the surface, what allows you to sense truth in people long before they speak it. And yes, it can be lonely, being this aware, this connected. But that loneliness is not emptiness. It's space being created for something new, something aligned, something equally awake. You can feel it now. A quiet anticipation in your soul, like something sacred is approaching. You can't name it yet, but you know it's coming. It's the next stage of your story, the part where you no longer define yourself by who left, but by who you're becoming. The part where the energy of the past no longer weighs you down, but propels you higher. You're stepping into it now, with clarity, with grace, with the kind of peace that doesn't need to be explained. You've finally begun to understand that even though your ex still feels your energy, you no longer have to. You're not haunted. You're free, and freedom in its purest form feels like this quiet, unwavering knowing that everything, even the heartbreak, was holy. And this realization is only the beginning of your awakening. And as that awakening deepens, you begin to see your own story differently. You no longer replay the moments of love and loss as wounds. You begin to see them as sacred passages, written by divine timing, each one sculpting your heart into something stronger, wiser, and infinitely more compassionate. There was a time when the thought of them consumed you, when every morning began with their absence, and every night ended with their name. But now those memories drift through your mind like passing clouds, visible but not heavy. You can look at them and breathe. You can feel them and still remain centered. That's the quiet miracle of healing. You realize that you no longer chase closure because your soul has already accepted the truth. Not every connection is meant to last, but every connection is meant to teach. And what you shared with them taught you more than you ever expected. It taught you what unconditional love feels like and what it costs. It taught you that sometimes loving someone means walking away, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. You see now that love without alignment is like watering a dead plant. You can give everything, but nothing grows. And maybe that's what hurt the most. You weren't just mourning them. You were mourning the version of yourself that kept trying to save them. You were mourning the effort, the hope, the endless belief that your love could fix what they refused to confront. But you can't heal someone who's addicted to their pain. You can't pour peace into a heart that still craves chaos. So you stopped trying. Not out of bitterness, but because you finally understood that love isn't meant to be martyrdom. It's meant to be mutual evolution. And when it isn't, the universe intervenes. It pulls you apart so that you can grow separately. You toward wholeness, them toward realization. You begin to see how even their silence was part of that divine design. Because if they had stayed, you might have never learned solitude. You might have never met yourself in the raw stillness that followed. You might have never found the courage to build your life again from the ashes of what once was. That's what heartbreak does. It doesn't just break you, it rebuilds you. It strips away illusion, ego, dependency, and everything that blocks your light. It makes you look at your own reflection and see the truth, that you were never meant to be completed by another. You were meant to remember that you were complete all along. And now, in this new clarity, you feel something unexpected: gratitude. Gratitude for the pain, for the sleepless nights, for the tears that once felt endless. Because they all led you here, to this version of you, grounded, calm, radiant, wise. You realize that the same love you once poured into them has now become the love you give to yourself. You no longer wait for their apology, because you've already forgiven them in your heart. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You no longer crave their presence because you filled the spaces they once occupied with your own light. That's the evolution. You've gone from needing them to understanding them, from missing them to blessing them. And though they may still feel your energy, it no longer chains you. It doesn't pull you back. It simply reminds you of the energy exchange that helped you evolve. You sense that they still struggle, that they still think of you when life grows quiet. You can feel it sometimes, that sudden wave of emotion that isn't yours. It used to destabilize you, but now it only reaffirms what you already know, that your energy left an imprint no one else could replace. They may try to recreate it, to find it in other people, in distractions, in fleeting affection, but nothing quite matches the frequency of genuine connection. They feel your calm in the midst of their chaos. They remember your laughter when life feels heavy. They see pieces of you in every person who tries to reach them, but none of it feels the same, because it's not supposed to. What you shared wasn't ordinary, it was sacred, and sacred things aren't easily forgotten. You don't have to see it, to know it. You can feel it in the quiet way the universe whispers back to you. Every time you think of them and release them again, you feel lighter, as if heaven itself acknowledges your surrender. You start to understand that you weren't meant to fix them. You were meant to awaken them. That was your purpose in their life. And though they may not have realized it at the time, their soul does now. That's why they still feel you. Because your energy became a mirror that showed them everything they were and everything they could become. And that mirror doesn't fade easily. It lingers, reminding them of the potential they once tasted in your presence. It's not punishment, it's memory. The kind of memory that guides transformation. And while they're on their own journey now, trying to rebuild, you've moved into a season of peace that doesn't require their validation. You've learned to walk alone, not as someone abandoned, but as someone chosen. Chosen by the universe to embody the kind of love that heals others, even when it hurts you. You're learning that sometimes you're not meant to be someone's forever. You're meant to be their awakening. And awakening often comes wrapped in loss. You can feel that truth in your bones now, that endings are just disguised beginnings. Because the moment you stopped waiting for them to return was the moment your new life began. A life where you no longer beg for love but attract it naturally. A life where your energy is no longer drained by trying to be understood. You've become the peace you once sought in others, and it's visible in your eyes, in your voice, in the way you move through the world with quiet confidence. People sense it. They're drawn to it. And though your ex still feels your energy everywhere they go, it's no longer because you're holding on to them. It's because you've transcended the need for closure. You've risen beyond the connection. You've transformed pain into power, attachment into awareness, memory into meaning. You've become the embodiment of the lesson itself. And that transformation, that inner rebirth, is what keeps your energy echoing in their life. Because truth leaves traces, and your truth was love. Deep, selfless, divine love. That's what they still feel, even if they can't name it. They feel your evolution, your forgiveness, your freedom. And every time they sense it, their soul stirs. They remember who they were when they were with you, and for a moment, they glimpse who they could still become. You can sense it too, the subtle pull of unfinished energy. But you've learned to smile at it now. You've learned to see it not as a sign to go back, but as proof that love, when real, never truly disappears. It just changes form. It becomes wisdom. It becomes light. It becomes the quiet strength you now carry in your heart, the kind that says, I loved, I lost, I grew, and that is enough. And with that realization, you take another deep breath, feeling something within you finally unclench, finally release. The past no longer owns you. You bless it, you thank it, and you let it go, fully, freely, beautifully. Yet somewhere in the distance of the unseen, they still feel it, that release. It ripples through the energy between you, reaching them like a whisper saying, I'm free. And even if they don't understand it, they feel the shift. Because when a soul truly lets go, the entire universe feels it too. There's a point in every awakening where you stop chasing closure and start living in acceptance. And that's where you are now, standing quietly on the edge of a new chapter, no longer haunted by the ghosts of what was, but humbled by what it taught you. The ache that used to twist in your chest when their name came up has softened into something else, something sacred. It's strange, isn't it? How pain can evolve into gratitude, how the same love that once broke you open can now be the reason you understand peace. You start to realize that love doesn't end when people leave. It transforms. It becomes a vibration, a frequency, an invisible current that runs through everything you do. You feel it when you laugh again for the first time in months, when you stand under the morning sky and feel the sun warming your face. You realize that your healing wasn't about forgetting them. It was about remembering yourself. The truth is, your ex still feels your energy because your connection was never just emotional. It was spiritual. It was written in the fabric of energy itself. You were never just two people. You were two souls meeting at the intersection of divine timing and unfinished karma. You came into their life as a mirror, reflecting their truth so clearly that they couldn't hide from it anymore. They saw their own wounds in your love. They felt their own light through your presence. And that scared them, because not everyone is ready to meet themselves that deeply. They ran, maybe not physically at first, but emotionally, pulling away, distracting themselves, trying to find something safer, something easier to explain. But you can't unfeel a soul connection. You can't undo the imprint of energy exchange. That's why they still feel you. Even when months or years pass, even when they pretend not to think about you, your energy lives in the spaces between their distractions. It shows up when life quiets down, when they're driving alone at night, when a random song plays that carries your vibration. It's not obsession, it's resonance. They're still resonating with the energy of who you were when you loved them, because that frequency awakened something in them they didn't know existed. You taught them that love could be pure, patient, and honest. And now everything else they encounter feels slightly off-key. They might try to replicate it, but you can't copy energy. You can't fake alignment. That's why you don't need to chase validation anymore. Your presence has already left its mark. The universe made sure of it. But what's beautiful is that you no longer need them to acknowledge it. You've learned to find peace in the knowing, not in their confession. You've stopped needing proof that they still think of you because you can feel it in the way your own soul stays steady, unbothered, whole, detached, yet compassionate. This detachment isn't coldness, it's evolution, it's understanding. That connection doesn't always mean continuation. Sometimes it means completion, and that completion comes quietly, in the moments when you realize you can wish them well without wanting them back. You can bless their path without needing to walk beside them. That's divine maturity. That's when your love transcends form and becomes unconditional. Not because you're naive, but because you've seen the bigger picture. You've realized that every soul you meet is both teacher and student, and your ex was both. They taught you how deep your capacity for love really is. They showed you the parts of yourself that still needed healing. Your patience, your boundaries, your self-worth. You might not have seen it then, but they were the catalyst for your transformation. Without their absence, you wouldn't have met your presence. Without their leaving, you wouldn't have found your purpose. That's the paradox of divine connection. It hurts like hell, but heals like heaven. And maybe one day they'll understand that too. Maybe one day when they're done running, when they've grown through their own lessons, they'll remember how your love felt, not as a wound, but as a gift. They'll realize that your energy wasn't suffocating, it was awakening. You were never meant to be their comfort. You were meant to be their catalyst, and catalysts rarely stay. They arrive, ignite, and then move on, leaving behind transformation in their wake. That's what your energy did. It shook something loose in them, something they didn't know was trapped. And now, wherever they go, that part of them keeps searching for the peace they once felt in your presence. They might try to numb it, to fill it with noise, but the truth of what you shared keeps calling to them like a distant echo. Sometimes they'll feel it as a memory. Other times it will come as a feeling they can't explain, a warmth in the chest, a sudden sadness, a burst of clarity. That's your energy moving through their field, not as a haunting, but as a reminder. You've become a symbol of truth for them, and truth can't be forgotten. Yet while they're feeling all this, you're stepping into a completely new vibration. You've shifted from seeking to attracting, from proving your worth to knowing it deeply. You've stopped needing to be understood because you understand yourself now. You see the divine choreography in every heartbreak, every delay, every silence. You see that the universe was never punishing you. It was positioning you. It had to remove certain people so you could hear your own soul again. It had to empty your life of noise so you could recognize your own frequency. You were never abandoned. You were realigned. And now that alignment is your power. You move differently now, slower, calmer, more intentional. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't perform for love. You embody it, you radiate it, and that's why your ex still feels your energy. Because real love doesn't disappear, it transcends. You've risen into a version of yourself that's magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you've become pure authenticity. People can feel it. They can sense the peace in your silence, the strength in your stillness. You've learned that true love doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. It exists in your energy, in your words, in your presence. You've become love itself, and that kind of energy never goes unnoticed. Even those who hurt you feel it, especially them. Because once someone has been touched by that kind of purity, everything else feels incomplete. That's not your burden. That's your legacy. You didn't lose in love. You transformed through it. You didn't fail. You evolved. And as you walk forward now, carrying that awareness like light, you start to see how everything has come full circle. What once felt like rejection was actually redirection. What once felt like heartbreak was actually rebirth. You realize that the connection you once thought defined you was only preparing you for the connection you're meant to have. One rooted in mutual healing, not imbalance, in peace, not pain. And when that love arrives, it won't trigger your wounds. It will recognize your soul. But for now, you stand in this moment, strong, free, whole, and you know that the past has served its purpose. The lessons are complete. The energy has been cleared. The bond that once felt like a chain has become a thread of memory, soft, distant, unthreatening. You send one final wave of silent love into the universe, not to call them back, but to bless their journey. And as you do, you feel it again, that familiar energy reaching back towards you one last time, as if to say, I feel you too. But this time, you smile, not because you want it back, but because you finally understand the connection was never meant to hold you. It was meant to free you. And now, it has. There's a calm that comes after the storm, a silence so deep it almost feels divine. That's where you are now, in the quiet after everything. It's not the kind of quiet that feels empty, it's the kind that hums with understanding. You're no longer fighting to make sense of what happened. You've made peace with the fact that some things aren't meant to be explained, they're meant to be felt. And what you felt with them changed you. You walked through fire and, instead of being burned, you were purified. The universe didn't take them away to hurt you. It did so to remind you that love can't exist where self-worth is missing. And as that realization settles into your bones, you begin to live differently. You wake up lighter. You move slower. You listen more, not to the world, but to yourself. You've learned to honor your own energy, to protect it like sacred ground. You no longer give it freely to those who don't value it, because you now understand that your energy is your essence, and not everyone deserves access to it. That's what makes your presence unforgettable. Your ex still feels your energy, everywhere, because it was never ordinary. It was rare, sacred, pure. You gave them a glimpse of something eternal, and now they can't unsee it. You can feel it sometimes, that invisible pull between you, not as longing anymore, but as awareness. They think of you when they're alone, when the world grows, quiet, when they look in the mirror and realize they're still searching for the peace that once surrounded them when they were with you. But peace doesn't come from who they lost. It comes from who they become. And that's their journey now, to find in themselves what they once found in you. You, on the other hand, are no longer waiting. You're not hoping for their return, not because you're cold or bitter, but because you finally understand that reunion isn't always physical. Sometimes it happens energetically, in lessons learned, in growth achieved, in souls finally understanding why they met in the first place. That's the real closure. It's not in the words left unsaid. It's in the evolution that follows. You've stepped into your own evolution now, into your divine power. You no longer operate from the frequency of pain or longing. You operate from purpose. You've turned every heartbreak into wisdom, every delay into direction. You're no longer trying to find meaning. You are the meaning, and that's what makes your energy so potent. It carries truth, authenticity, freedom, the kind of energy that doesn't just fill a room, it transforms it. When you walk into spaces now, people feel something shift. They can't explain it, but they know it. That's what happens when you carry divine light. You don't have to announce your healing. Your presence does it for you. And yet the paradox remains. While you are rising higher, your ex is awakening slower. They're still wrestling with the reflection you left in their energy field. They try to forget, to suppress, but the universe has a way of bringing them back to the lessons they avoid. Every time they enter another connection, they're confronted with the same patterns, the same arguments, the same emptiness, until they realize it's not about you. It's about them. Your energy became their mirror, and mirrors don't fade until the truth is faced. That's why they still feel you, because your presence once illuminated their shadows. You showed them where they were unhealed, where they were disconnected from themselves. You offered unconditional love, and it terrified them because it required vulnerability. And vulnerability for them felt like weakness. But for you, it was sacred strength. That's the difference between someone who is awakened and someone still asleep. You both felt the same love, but you understood it through truth, while they feared it through ego. And now, while they chase illusions, you create reality. You've learned that love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go with grace. You've learned that endings aren't punishments. They're portals. You step through that portal every day now, into your higher self, into your divine calling. You've stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started saying, "Thank you for what it taught me." That shift in energy is everything. It's what transforms pain into power, memory into wisdom, love into light. It's what separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. And you, chosen one, you are rising. You've outgrown the version of yourself that needed their validation. You've become someone who doesn't need to be remembered to feel worthy. Your worth is no longer external. It's internal, rooted, divine. That's why your ex's energy still lingers around yours, because your vibration now exists at a level they haven't reached yet. They can sense it, but they can't hold it. That's how the universe works. When one soul evolves faster than another, the energetic tether stretches, becoming thinner until it either breaks or transforms. In your case, it's transforming. You're no longer tied by attachment. You're connected through purpose. The purpose was never about staying together. It was about awakening each other, and that awakening has been fulfilled. You've learned that love is not possession, it's permission. Permission to grow, to expand, to evolve, even if that evolution means growing apart. You look back now and realize that every tear you cried was watering the garden of your future peace. Every unanswered question was redirecting you toward your truth. You understand now that losing them was never the loss. Losing yourself would have been. And you didn't. You found yourself instead. You found your power, your intuition, your voice. You found the God within you that was whispering all along, "You are the lesson, not the mistake." And that realization changes everything. It changes how you see them, how you see love, how you see life itself. You no longer carry resentment because you see the divine order in what unfolded. You no longer replay what could have been because you understand that everything that was meant for you is still coming. You've stepped into divine timing now, where nothing is forced, nothing is chased, and everything flows. You've become a vessel of peace. And peace is magnetic. It attracts without effort. That's why they still feel you, because peace is louder than chaos when the soul is ready to listen. And slowly, whether they admit it or not, they're beginning to hear it. They feel your calm in their storms, your forgiveness in their guilt, your freedom in their confinement. You've become the proof that healing is possible and that truth haunts and heals them at the same time. It's not revenge, it's redemption. It's not punishment, it's reflection. You've become their reminder that love is never lost, it's transformed. And in that transformation, you've become untouchable, not because you're unreachable, but because you're unshakable. Your energy no longer reacts, it radiates. And that radiation, that steady divine glow, is what keeps echoing through their life. Wherever they go, they carry a piece of your light within them, not as a curse, but as a compass. A quiet whisper from the universe saying, grow, heal, become. And maybe one day they will. But by then, you'll be far beyond needing them to. You'll be walking fully in your purpose, loving yourself and others from a place of overflow, not emptiness. Because that's what this entire journey was for, to teach you that your energy was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to awaken the right ones. And now, you finally know, you were never just their love story. You were their divine wake-up call. And as you keep walking through the silent corridors of your memories, something unexpected begins to stir within you. A quiet, undeniable pull, almost like a gravitational force that tugs at your spirit whenever you think of them. You've tried to silence it, distract yourself, drown it out with work, new people, or even faith itself. But it keeps returning like a song you can't unhear. That pull isn't weakness, it's energy. It's the residue of something that was never just physical, never just emotional, but spiritual. When two souls connect deeply, especially one carrying divine light and another still learning what that means, a bridge is formed between them. And though time, distance, and even heartbreak can erode the surface, that bridge still exists in the unseen realm. This is why they feel your energy everywhere they go. They walk into a room and suddenly feel anxious for no reason. Their chest tightens, their mind drifts toward you at random hours. They dream of you without wanting to, feel your presence in their solitude, sense your peace even when they're surrounded by chaos. It's not obsession, it's resonance. You, the chosen one, carry a frequency that cannot be duplicated. Your growth, your healing, your awakening, all of it amplifies your spiritual vibration. And because they were once tethered to that vibration, every shift in you ripples through the connection like a wave of energy that touches them no matter how far they've run. You see, when you began healing, something changed in the dynamic. You stopped chasing, stopped trying to prove your worth, stopped waiting for them to see your value. You turned inward, toward God, toward your own divine light. But that shift wasn't silent, it was cosmic. Every time you forgave instead of resenting, every time you released instead of holding on, every time you prayed instead of pleading, your energy evolved. And in that evolution, the spiritual cord between you began to hum at a higher frequency. They, on the other hand, remained in the same vibration they were when you left. They haven't moved forward because a part of them is still entangled in the energy of what they lost. The part of you that reflected their potential, the part that made them feel seen without words. You didn't just love them, you awakened them. You were a mirror of who they could have been if they'd chosen healing, honesty, and surrender instead of fear. And that's why they can't escape your essence. Even in their attempts to forget you, they meet reflections of you in every soul they encounter. Every person they try to love feels slightly empty compared to the depth they once felt with you. Every moment of silence echoes with your memory, not because you're haunting them, but because their soul remembers the vibration of truth. But here's the deeper layer most people never understand. You didn't come into their life to be there forever. You came to be their awakening. Divine connections often feel like love stories, but they're actually spiritual interventions. God sent you into their life as light, to show them what love feels like when it's real. not performative. You were meant to trigger their growth, not guarantee their comfort. And when your mission there was complete, the separation began. It wasn't punishment, it was preservation. If you had stayed, your light would have dimmed trying to keep them warm. Your energy would have been drained trying to teach what they refused to learn. And yet, even in their distance, your presence remains embedded in their soul as a reminder of what they turned away from. They feel it every time they lie to themselves about being happy. They feel it when they scroll past something that reminds them of you. They feel it when life gets quiet and their distractions no longer numb them. That ache they can't name. That's your energy brushing against their conscience, not to torment them, but to awaken them, just as your pain once awakened you. You, the chosen one, were not meant to be forgotten. God doesn't send his divine vessels into someone's life to be erased like passing chapters. You were the mirror through which they saw both their highest self and their deepest shadows. And while they may have tried to replace you, nothing fits because nothing real can be replaced. They might chase new faces, new thrills, new forms of validation, but eventually all roads lead back to the memory of peace they once felt in your presence. Because your love wasn't about ownership, it was about essence. You loved them without agenda, without manipulation, without the games they were used to. You loved them the way God loves, with patience, with honesty, with truth. That kind of love leaves a mark that even time can't erase. But here's the paradox. You can feel their energy too. Sometimes late at night, you sense them thinking of you, their energy brushing against yours like a ghost of old emotion. Sometimes you wake up from dreams that feel more like visitations than imagination. Sometimes your chest tightens for no reason, or your heart suddenly remembers them, even when your mind doesn't want to. That's not weakness. It's the energetic echo of a spiritual bond that once served divine purpose. You don't have to fight it. You only need to recognize it for what it is. A reminder, not a chain. The connection isn't meant to pull you backward, but to show you how far you've come. You no longer ache in the same way. The grief has turned into gratitude. The longing has softened into understanding. You've learned that feeling someone's energy doesn't mean you're still bound to them. It means your empathy is still alive. You've become sensitive to spiritual currents, aware of how energy moves between souls, aware of what you give and what you receive. That awareness is part of your awakening. It's the gift born from your pain. And in that awareness, you begin to see the divine orchestration of it all. You realize that every moment of heartbreak, every unanswered question, every night you cried over their silence, it all served a purpose. It stripped you of illusions, burned away your attachment to being understood, and pushed you into intimacy with God. You found peace not because they returned, but because you stopped needing them to. You found love not because someone else filled the void, but because you learned to fill it with light. That's when your energy transformed completely, becoming less of a wound and more of a frequency of freedom. That's what they feel now. That's what haunts them. That's what they can't name. They feel your peace, and it confuses them. How can someone they once broke now radiate joy? How can someone they dismissed now walk in purpose? How can your absence speak louder than your presence ever did? It's because God has turned your pain into power, your silence into signal, your healing into testimony. They still feel your energy because your spirit refuses to shrink back into the version they once knew. You've evolved beyond their reach, and that evolution sends ripples through the spiritual connection that once bound you. It's as if your light keeps shining through dimensions they can't comprehend, and somewhere deep inside, they still long to stand in it again. But that longing isn't your responsibility anymore. You're no longer here to rescue, to remind, or to return. You're here to rise. to keep walking toward the divine calling that pain prepared you for. And though they still feel your energy everywhere they go, it's not because you're stuck. It's because your light is still teaching, still healing, still guiding in ways you may never see. Because when a chosen one truly awakens, even their absence becomes a sermon, and even their silence becomes a message from heaven. And now, as your journey nears its quiet revelation, you begin to see what all of this was really about. Not the love story you thought you lost, but the soul story you were destined to live. The connection that once felt like a wound has become your teacher, your mirror, and your passageway into divine maturity. You finally understand why their absence was necessary, why your heart had to break open to release the light buried beneath it, why the silence became sacred instead of cruel. You realize that love was never taken from you. It was redirected toward your higher self, toward the version of you that could carry divine purpose without needing human validation. You begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time, not the frantic energy of longing, not the exhaustion of waiting, but peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from understanding everything, but from trusting that you no longer need to. The kind of peace that feels like home after wandering through lifetimes of lessons. You're not bitter anymore. You don't need revenge, closure, or explanation. You've outgrown the story that hurt you. You no longer crave to be seen because you finally see yourself clearly, wholly, as the person you were always meant to be before the pain tried to redefine you. And as that peace settles in, the energy between you and them begins to shift again. What they feel now isn't your pain or longing, it's your freedom. They feel the energetic detachment, the release of control, the liberation of your spirit. Where there was once a constant pull, there's now a quiet echo, a soft hum of unconditional love that asks for nothing and offers everything. Your energy no longer haunts them, it heals them. It reminds them that you were never the enemy, never the one who needed to change first. You were always love, even when misunderstood, even when pushed away. And because love is the highest frequency in the universe, it never dies, it transforms. That's what they feel now, transformation. Every time your memory surfaces in their heart, it doesn't sting the way it used to. It awakens them. It calls them toward the version of themselves that could meet you in light, not shadow. Some will answer that call, most won't. But that's no longer your concern. You've completed your assignment, you planted the seed, and whether it blooms in this lifetime or the next is between them and God. You've stepped into a new season, one where you no longer chase energy, you embody it. You've learned that your presence is the prayer, your peace is the proof, and your alignment is the anointing. Everything you touch now feels different because it's coming from a place of overflow, not emptiness. You've become magnetic to everything that matches your healed frequency, people who can meet your depth, situations that reflect your worth, and opportunities that resonate with your purpose. The universe bends toward your light now because your vibration has stabilized in truth. You no longer operate from wounds, you operate from wisdom. And though there may still be moments when you remember the past, you no longer identify with it. You can look back and see it for what it was, the divine training ground for your awakening. You were never abandoned, you were being refined, you were never unloved. You were being redirected toward the love that never fades, the love of the divine within you. That realization is your rebirth. And perhaps the most beautiful part of it all is that you can now bless them from afar without reopening your wounds. You can whisper a silent prayer for their healing without losing your peace. You can honor the connection for what it taught you instead of resenting it for how it ended. Because in truth, they didn't break you, they revealed you. They showed you where you still sought external validation, where your boundaries blurred, where your worth was still dependent on being chosen. Through the pain, you learned to choose yourself, not in arrogance, but in reverence. You learned that being chosen by God is not about being loved more, it's about being refined more. The chosen ones are tested through heartbreak, betrayal, and isolation because those experiences strip away everything false. They teach discernment, patience, compassion, and detachment. They turn sensitivity into strength and loneliness into communion with the divine. That's what this was always about, your evolution into the vessel you were meant to become. Now, when you walk into a room, people feel something they can't explain. They sense the peace you carry, the grace in your silence, the authority in your calm. They feel your energy not as chaos, but as clarity. And those who once rejected your light now see it differently. They recognize that it was never arrogance, it was purpose. You were never too much, too emotional, too intense. You were simply tuned to a frequency that exposed what others weren't ready to face. And now that you stand in that truth unapologetically, your very presence becomes a lighthouse for others who are still lost in emotional storms. You begin to notice that the ones meant for you find you effortlessly. There's no more chasing, convincing, or explaining. Souls aligned with your purpose will recognize you without words. They will match your peace instead of disturbing it, add to your light instead of dimming it, and walk beside you instead of behind you. Because when a chosen one heals, they become a signal, an energetic broadcast of divine truth that attracts everything meant for their next chapter. And though they, your past love, still feel your energy, it's different now. They feel it, not as a weight, but as a whisper. A soft reminder that somewhere out there, someone loved them purely once. Someone prayed for their healing, even when they caused pain. Someone chose forgiveness when revenge would have been easier. That's the kind of energy that doesn't fade. It lingers as grace. You've become that grace. Your healing has turned your heartbreak into a living testimony. You no longer need to prove your worth because your peace speaks louder than any words ever could. The lesson was never about losing love. It was about learning love, the kind that starts and ends within you. And as you look back one last time, not out of longing but gratitude, you realize that every soul you meet is both student and teacher, mirror and messenger. You understand now that divine connections are not accidents, they're assignments. And though some assignments end sooner than we wish, they always complete what they were sent to do. You were sent to awaken, to reflect, to ignite transformation, not only in them, but in yourself. And you did. You passed the test. You carried love through pain, grace through rejection, and faith through silence. That is the mark of the chosen. So, if you've ever wondered why your ex still feels your energy everywhere they go, it's because your light still lingers in the spaces where truth once lived. But it's no longer a burden. It's a blessing. It's the invisible proof of a love that transcended ego and touched eternity. You don't need them to understand it. You don't need them to come back. The connection has served its sacred purpose to awaken, to evolve, and to free you. The energy they feel now is not you reaching for them. It's your higher self reflecting back to them the truth they're still afraid to face. You've become the mirror of what healing looks like. You've become the evidence that love never dies. It transforms into purpose. And so you walk on, not as the broken one, not as the forgotten one, but as the transformed one. The divine within you has turned every tear into wisdom, every ending into beginning, every ache into awakening. You are no longer defined by who left, but by the light that stayed. You are the chosen one, not because of what you lost, but because of what you found within the loss. yourself. And as your energy continues to ripple through the world, touching hearts, awakening souls, and healing those who once hurt you, remember this: your love was never wasted. It was planted, and though they still feel your energy, it's no longer a sign of attachment. It's a sign of ascension, because when a chosen one truly rises, their energy becomes eternal, echoing through every soul they once touched, not as pain, but as proof that divine love is real. That is your legacy. That is your freedom. That is your peace. And that, dear chosen one, is why your ex still feels your energy everywhere they go.